I will never forget the moment my brother's perfect little world cracked like thin ice under a heavy boot. It happened right there at our Christmas dinner table. Twinkling lights, roasted turkey smell, soft music, and then his CEO girlfriend stood up, stared him in the eyes, and calmly said the words that turned his face the color of cold ashes. "Evan, you're fired. And I'll make sure every investor hears what you just said tonight." The room went silent. Forks stopped moving. My brother's smile collapsed like wet paper. And the rest of us? We froze, because none of us understood how the night had flipped so fast. 1 second, he was mocking me to impress her. The next, she was destroying his career right in front of everyone. What he said, what he called me, it was cruel enough to choke the air out of the room. But what she said back, that was the moment I realized I wasn't the only one he'd been lying to. And just as she opened her mouth to reveal why she was firing him, just as her voice sharpened like a blade ready to cut through every secret he'd kept, my mom gasped loudly, pointing behind her, and shouted, "What is that?" The entire table whipped around. And that's where I'll stop for now. Because before I tell you what everyone saw, you need to understand how we even got to a Christmas dinner full of betrayal, humiliation, and a career going down in flames. My story started weeks before that night, long before I ever knew the truth about my brother, his shiny new job, or the woman who would help me get my revenge without even meaning to. Please watch, like, and subscribe because this story will leave you speechless. My name is Olivia Warren, and I'm the quiet one in my family. Not shy, just the type who'd rather read, paint, or watch a movie by myself than deal with drama. My brother, Evan, is the opposite. Loud, charming, confident in that every room belongs to me kind of way. Growing up, he teased me about everything. My voice, my clothes, my dreams. Nothing was off limits. But he stopped once we got older, or so I thought. I didn't know he'd been hiding years of resentment behind that handsome smile he wore everywhere. I didn't know he'd been telling people I was a failure who didn't try hard enough. I didn't know he blamed me for something that wasn't even my fault. And I definitely didn't know that his girlfriend, Madeline Pierce, the CEO of the company where he worked, had already started seeing through him before Christmas night. But back then, I only knew one thing. This Christmas would be our first time meeting her. And because my family is dramatic about everything, Mom cooked as if we were feeding an army. Dad bought new plates so she won't think we're shabby. My sister, Lily, spent 2 hours setting the table. They all wanted to impress Madeline. I was the only one who didn't really care. I had enough stress of my own. I had just been laid off from my job at a marketing firm, downsizing, not performance, but somehow Evan twisted the story when telling our parents. He made it sound like I got myself fired for being lazy. I didn't correct him. I should have. But that was the mistake that set everything else in motion. The day of dinner, I wore a simple green dress, did soft makeup, and tried not to feel awkward. When Evan and Madeline finally arrived, everyone got up to greet them. She was stunning, dark red coat, elegant hair, warm smile. She hugged my mom right away and even complimented the house. Then her eyes landed on me. "You must be Olivia," she said warmly. I nodded. "Nice to meet you." But before I could even finish the sentence, Evan laughed loudly. "She's the artistic one," he said with a smirk. "She tries." The way he said tries made my stomach tighten. Madeline's smile faded just a little. Not much, but enough. And that was only the beginning. During dinner, everyone talked about work and holidays and gifts. But somehow, always, Evan found small ways to embarrass me. If I spoke, he cut in. If someone asked about my job, he explained it in a way that made me sound like a helpless child. I could feel my face heating up, my fingers shaking around my fork, my chest tightening like I couldn't breathe. At one point, I finally said quietly, "Evan, stop." Instead of stopping, he laughed louder. "I mean, it's cute," he said, leaning back in his chair like the king of the world. "She's been trying to find herself since forever. I keep telling her life isn't a hobby." My heart dropped. Mom whispered, "Evan, that's enough." But he didn't care. And then he said the line that would later cost him everything. I mean, she's basically the family charity case. But hey, she looks nice tonight, so let's clap for that. He actually clapped. Tiny, mocking claps. While everyone stared in horror. I felt something in me break. Fully break. But I lifted my chin and refused to cry. I refused to let him win. I opened my mouth to speak. But someone beat me to it. Madeline. She put her fork down slowly, wiped her mouth with a napkin, turned her head, and looked at Evan with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger. Not disgust. Pure disappointment. Evan, she said quietly, we need to talk. He smirked, thinking she was impressed by his confidence. But her next words cut him open. Not later. Now. Everyone froze. What, why? He laughed nervously. She inhaled, then said, because everything you just said? That tells me something about you I should have seen earlier. My pulse pounded. Mom's hand covered her mouth. Dad stiffened. Then Madeline stood up, placed her hands on the table, leaned forward, and said in a calm, controlled voice that somehow felt louder than a scream. You're fired. Evan's face drained of color. What? Mad, baby. What are you talking? No, she snapped. Do not call me that. Not after tonight. Not after what I've learned about you. He stared at her like he didn't understand English. What? Learned what? Everything, she said, her voice steady and cold. And if you say one more word, I will tell your entire family exactly why you're losing your job tonight. Silence swallowed the room. Dead, choking silence. She took a step back, ready to reveal the truth, the part that would destroy him even more than losing his job. But right then, right before she could speak, Mom suddenly pointed behind her and screamed. What is that? Everyone gasped. Chairs scraped. Madeline turned around sharply. And I froze, because I knew exactly what that sound meant. Something had gone very, very wrong. Mom's scream sliced through the dining room like a knife. Everyone spun around, and for a second, nobody breathed. The lights on the Christmas tree flickered. A cold air swept through the room, even though every window was shut tight. And there, right behind Madeline, was the thing Mom had screamed about. It wasn't a person. It wasn't an animal. It was my dad's laptop, propped open on the counter, playing a video none of us knew existed. And not just any video. It was Evan. His face clear. His voice loud. His words unmistakable. He was sitting in his office at Madeline's company, talking to someone on a video call. And straight from the speakers came the sentence that drained every last drop of blood from his face. I'm only dating her because she's the CEO. You think I'd ever go for someone like that if she didn't sign my checks? Please. I'm using her until I get the promotion. After that, she's gone. The room exploded into silence. A dead, empty, ringing silence. Madeline didn't blink, didn't move, didn't breathe. My dad walked over slowly and picked up the laptop with shaking hands, as if it were a bomb. Why was this playing? He whispered. But nobody answered. Evan's mouth dropped open. His whole body froze. For the first time in his life, he looked small, weak, terrified. I can explain, he choked. Madeline raised her hand sharply. Don't, she said. Just one word. Cold as ice. Hard as stone. Her eyes stayed locked on the screen, replaying his voice over and over. That cruel laugh. That awful confidence. The way he said using. Then she looked at me. At me. And her voice softened in a way that made something warm spread through my chest. Olivia, she said quietly, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swallowed hard. It's not your fault. But Evan panicked. No, it's edited. It's someone hacked. Liv, tell her. Tell them this is. Stop talking. Madeline's voice cut him cleanly. Stop lying. He shook his head violently. No, you don't understand that video. Evan, she said, stepping closer to him. That video is from the security system in your office. You didn't know it auto-records video calls, did you? His eyes widened. She continued, her tone growing sharper with every word. I saw this clip last week. I kept it to myself, hoping you would prove it wrong. hoping it was taken out of context. But after everything you said tonight, her voice trembled, not with sadness, but with anger controlled so tightly it sounded like steel. Now I know exactly who you are. Evan looked like he might faint. My mom whispered, "Oh my God." My dad set the laptop down with trembling hands. Lily stared at Evan like she didn't recognize him at all. And I felt something strange. Not joy. Not victory. Not even revenge. Just release. Like a weight had been tied around my chest for years and had suddenly fallen off.
But the moment didn't last.
Because Evan snapped. "I did all this for you, he yelled, so loudly the lights rattled. "I was trying to make something of myself. You all think I'm the bad guy, but Liv is the one who." He pointed straight at me. Everything stopped. My heart thudded once. Hard. Painfully hard. Madeline stepped between us instantly. "You don't talk to her," she warned. "Not anymore." But he pushed past her, eyes burning with something ugly. Something that scared me. "You ruin everything," he spat at me. "You always have. If you had just—" Before he could finish, Madeline grabbed his arm with iron strength. "Evan Warren," she said slowly, "you're not just fired. You're done. And you're not going to blame your sister for the mess you created. Not tonight. Not ever again."
He pulled his arm back.
"You can't do this to me," he whispered. "Oh, I can," she answered. "And I will." Then she turned toward the door. But she didn't leave.
She stopped,
turned back, and said the sentence that made everyone gasp. "And by the way, I know what you did with the company funds." Evan froze in place. My stomach dropped. What do you mean?" I whispered before I could stop myself. Madeline's eyes stayed on him. "He knows." Evan's lips parted, but no sound came out. My breathing quickened. "What company funds?" my dad asked quietly. Madeline didn't look away. "Do you want to tell them?" she asked him coldly. "Or should I?" "I didn't steal anything," he shouted. Nobody had said the word steal. He just said it on his own. And that's when everything erupted. My mom burst into tears. My dad stood up so fast his chair toppled. Madeline reached into her bag. And Evan bolted. Just ran. Out of the dining room. Down the hall. Straight toward the back door. "Evan!" Dad shouted. Madeline's eyes widened. "Stop him." But by the time we reached the hallway, the door was already open. Cold air blew into the house. Footprints stamped across the snow. And Evan was gone. Just gone. Into the dark winter night. Leaving his career, his lies, his family, and his ruin behind him. For a moment, none of us moved. The cold night air crept into the hallway like a ghost, brushing against my feet and raising goosebumps on my arms. The snow outside reflected faint moonlight, making the world look silver and sharp. Evan had run into that darkness, like something was chasing him. But the only thing chasing him was the truth. My mom covered her mouth, still crying. My dad stared out the door with a stiff, hollow look, like he couldn't understand how the boy he raised had just sprinted into the night like a criminal. Lily clung to the banister, shaking. Madeline, she didn't cry, didn't shout, didn't panic. She simply tightened her coat, stepped past me, and said in a steady, cold voice, "I'm going after him." I grabbed her arm. "Madeline, he's my brother." She looked at me, and for the first time that night, her eyes softened with something close to pity. "I know," she said gently, "but he won't listen to any of you right now. He thinks you're judging him. He thinks I'm ruining his life. And he's not thinking clearly." A tiny breath escaped her lips. "He's scared." I swallowed hard. "He's dangerous." Madeline nodded. "Exactly." Without another word, she stepped into the snow and followed the footprints leading down our backyard, toward the woods that bordered our property. My dad shouted after her, "You don't have to," but she didn't look back.
She went anyway.
Because she wasn't just Evan's boss tonight. She wasn't just his ex. She wasn't even just the woman whose heart he'd stomped on. Right now, she was the only one brave enough to face the version of him we had never seen. My mom grabbed my arm tightly. "Olivia, tell me this isn't real." Tell me he didn't steal. Tell me he didn't use her. I looked at her with tears pressing behind my eyes. But I didn't lie. I think he did, Mom, I whispered. I think he did all of it. She collapsed into my dad's arms. I backed away, feeling the weight of everything sink deeper into me. Because even though Evan had humiliated me at that table, even though he had mocked me, embarrassed me, and blamed me for things I never did, he was still my brother. And watching his world fall apart felt like a storm ripping through my chest. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Minutes passed.
10.
15.
20.
The house stayed silent, except for Mom's soft crying and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the living room. Through the window, I watched Madeline's figure disappear deeper into the woods. The wind grew stronger, blowing snow sideways.
Dad paced.
Lily sat on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees. Then, finally, a door creaked. But not the back door.
The front one.
The knob turned slowly, almost too slowly. We all jolted. My dad moved first, stepping forward like a soldier ready for anything. The door opened halfway, then a little more, until a figure stepped in, shivering violently, covered in snow. It wasn't Evan. It was Madeline. Her hair was wet. Her coat was soaked. Her breath came out in harsh clouds. She shut the door behind her and leaned on it, gasping. My mom rushed to her. Did you find him? Is he okay? Madeline lifted her head. Her face was pale and scared. A kind of fear that didn't match the confident CEO we'd met earlier. Madeline. I asked. What happened? She swallowed hard. Her voice shook. I found him, she whispered. But he wasn't alone. My stomach twisted. What do you mean? She took a shaky step forward. There was someone with him, she said. Who? My dad demanded. Madeline looked at me, then at all of us. I don't know, she answered. But he was arguing with a man in the woods. A man I've never seen before. And Evan gave him a bag. A bag. Lily whispered. Madeline nodded. A black one. Heavy. He handed it over like they'd planned it. My heart dropped. What was in it? Madeline's voice lowered to almost a whisper.
Cash.
My mom gasped so loudly her voice broke. Dad's eyebrows shot up. Cash? Where did he get that kind of money? But deep down, I already knew. The stolen company funds. Madeline confirmed it with a slow nod. It's the missing money. The amount that triggered the audit. My dad rubbed his forehead with both hands. Oh, God, my son. But Madeline wasn't done. She looked at me again. Her eyes filled with a heavy sadness.
There's more, she said.
After Evan handed over the bag, the man said something. Something that didn't make sense to me at first. My throat tightened. What did he say? She hesitated, as if saying it would make everything worse. Then she whispered. He asked Evan if he got rid of the girl problem. The room went still. Mom whispered. What girl problem? Madeline looked straight at me. And for the first time, fear punched through my chest so hard I felt my knees shake. She pointed at me. He meant Olivia. The air was sucked out of the room. My dad's eyes widened. What are you talking about? Madeline took a deep breath. When the man asked if Evan handled the girl problem, Evan said, her voice trembled. He said, she won't be a problem after tonight. I froze in place. My breath caught. Lily covered her mouth with both hands. Mom let out a choked sound, half scream, half sob. Dad grabbed the back of a chair like he needed it to stay standing. Madeline stepped closer to me. He didn't say your name, she whispered.
But he meant you.
My heart thudded, so hard it hurt. Everything suddenly connected. His insults at dinner. His anger. His outburst.
His blame.
His rage when Madeline defended me. His sudden panic when the video played. His sprint into the dark. He wasn't just humiliated. He was desperate. Desperate enough to say things to a stranger. Desperate enough to pay someone. Desperate enough to...
No.
Panic clawed up my throat. I don't understand, I said, stepping back. Why me? What did I do? Why would? Madeline swallowed. Her next words fell like stones. Because Evan told someone that you knew something about him. I stared at her. Knew what? She shook her head. I don't know. But he thinks you do, my dad said. And he thinks you're a threat. Madeline nodded. That man in the woods, she whispered. He asked Evan if you were scared. Evan said you didn't know enough to be scared yet. My chest tightened. And then she hesitated. What? I whispered. What did he say then? Madeline closed her eyes. And when she spoke, I felt my entire world tilt. He told the man, don't worry. After tonight, she won't remember anything. The room spun. I stumbled back. Dad caught me by the arm. Mom burst into full sobs. Lily whispered, oh God, oh God, oh God. And the chapter would end right there. But something happened. A loud, sharp knock slammed against the front door.
Once. Twice.
3 times. Madeline whipped around. Dad froze. Mom gasped. Lily squeaked. I stared. Because the knock wasn't gentle. It wasn't polite. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't a friend. It sounded like someone pounding with urgency. With anger. With intent. The whole house went quiet. Then another knock. Harder.
Boom. Boom.
Who is that? Mom cried. But in my gut, I already knew. The pounding on the door didn't stop. It grew louder, shaking the frame, rattling the Christmas wreath until snowflakes dropped onto the welcome mat like tiny pieces of falling ice.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
My mom grabbed my arm, so tightly it hurt. My dad stepped forward, trying to stand tall even though I could see his hands trembling. Lily pressed herself into the corner of the hallway, eyes huge and terrified. Madeline turned her head slowly toward me, and the look in her eyes made my blood turn cold. She knew. She knew exactly who was on the other side. The house went silent except for the violent knocking. I felt frozen in place, my feet glued to the floor. Another slam hit the door, this time hard enough to make the Christmas decorations shake. Who? Who could it be at this hour? Mom stammered, though her voice cracked like she didn't really want the answer. Dad took one careful step toward the peephole. Madeline stretched out her arm, stopping him. Don't, she said sharply. He turned to her. We can't just stand here. What if it's Evan? What if he's hurt? Madeline's jaw tightened. It's not Evan. How do you know? Mom cried. Madeline's voice dropped to a whisper. Because Evan would have called first. He knows you'd let him in too fast. Whoever's at that door isn't friendly.
Boom. Boom.
The pounding grew faster, angrier, as if whoever was outside knew we were inside, hesitating, trapped. Dad's breath caught. I'm calling the police. He pulled out his phone with fumbling fingers. Madeline shook her head. Not yet. Dad frowned. What do you mean, not yet? Someone is trying to break our door down. Yes, she said, her eyes locked onto the door. But listen.
We did.
And I heard it, a voice.
Low. Male.
Muffled through the wood. Open the door, it said. I know you're in there. A chill shot down my spine. I don't know that voice, Mom whispered. But I did. Because somehow, without ever hearing it before that moment, I knew it belonged to the man in the woods. The one Evan had met. The one he'd given the money to. The one who had asked if Evan had handled the girl problem. The one who might have been paid to hurt me. My stomach twisted painfully. Dad whispered, Who is that? Madeline inhaled slowly, her voice tight. The man Evan was arguing with. Mom gasped.
What?
Why would he? To finish the job, I whispered. The room went dead still. Another blow slammed into the door. He can't get in, right? Lily asked, her voice shaking. Our house was old. The locks weren't great. The wood wasn't thick. I didn't answer because I didn't know. Madeline stepped forward, lowering her voice. We need to get away from the front of the house. Now. Dad nodded and gently pushed Mom down the hall. Lily hurried after them. Madeline grabbed my hand. And for a moment, just one moment, I felt safe. But then the man outside spoke again. This time louder. This time clearer. Olivia. My heart stopped. Mom screamed. Dad turned pale. Lily broke down in tears. Open the door, the man yelled. I just want to talk. His tone didn't sound like he wanted to talk. It sounded like he wanted to drag me outside and silence me forever. Madeline squeezed my hand. Don't react, she murmured. He doesn't know where you are in the house. Stay quiet. But he kept calling my name. Olivia. I know you're there. He slammed his fist again and again. The wood cracked at the edge. Dad whispered, he's going to break it down. Mom trembled, covering her ears. Madeline pulled me behind her, guiding us backward toward the kitchen, keeping her eyes on the door like she expected it to explode open at any second. Dad dialed the police. But before he could hit call, a sudden quiet fell. All pounding stopped. Even the wind outside seemed to hush. Dad's thumb hovered over dial. Mom lowered her trembling hands from her ears. Lily peeked from behind the wall. Madeline froze mid-step. And I didn't breathe. The silence was worse than the knocking. Much worse. Then, a creak. Slow.
Long.
Drawn out. The doorknob was turning. Someone was trying to open it from the outside. Mom whimpered. Madeline whispered, he's checking if it's locked. Then, a click. Another click. Metal scraping metal. Dad whispered, horrified, he has tools. He's picking the lock, Madeline said. The room tilted around me. I felt faint. My pulse fluttered weakly. I pictured Evan out there somewhere, alone in the dark. His face terrified. His lies crashing down. His guilt rising like a storm. Had he sent this man here? Had he told him to shut me up? Had he told him I knew something, anything, about the stolen money? But what did Evan think I knew? What did he do? Madeline, I whispered, why would he want to hurt me? I don't know anything. I swear, I don't know anything. Madeline turned to me with a look that twisted my stomach. Maybe you don't, she said softly. But he believes you do. But why? I choked out. Because guilt doesn't need evidence, she said. Just fear. Another loud click echoed from the door. Dad hissed. He's almost through. Madeline grabbed his arm and whispered urgently, get your family into the basement. Dad shook his head. No, we're not splitting up. Madeline looked him dead in the eyes. It's the only room with a reinforced door. Go. Dad hesitated, but only for a second. He grabbed Mom and Lily, ushering them toward the basement stairs. Madeline grabbed my hand again, and we followed. We stepped onto the top stair when, crack, the sound of wood snapping. The lock had given way. Madeline shoved me. Go. We rushed down the stairs. Dad slammed the basement door shut behind us, locking it. The basement was cold, dimly lit, full of old Christmas decorations and dusty boxes. The small bulb overhead flickered. Mom was crying silently. Lily was shaking too hard to speak. Dad pressed his ear against the door, listening. Madeline pulled me closer to the corner. And then, we heard the front door swing open. A man's heavy footsteps echoed through the house.
Slow.
Deliberate. Searching. I covered my mouth to stop the scream rising in my throat. Madeline whispered, he's inside. Dad whispered, he's walking toward the hall. Footsteps approached the basement door. And stopped. Right above us. The floorboards creaked. Mom sobbed harder. Lily squeezed her eyes shut. Dad held the basement door handle like his life depended on it. The man upstairs exhaled, loud, annoyed, dangerous. Then he tried the basement doorknob.
Click. Click.
He jiggled it harder. Then he banged on it.
Hard.
The sound thundered through the basement.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
Mom flinched. Lily whimpered. Dad held tighter. Madeline stood in front of me like a guard dog.
Boom. Boom.
Open the door, the man roared. Nobody moved. Then, silence again. The footsteps backed away. We all exhaled. Too soon. Because then, something shifted above us. A faint sound. A new sound. Coming from the kitchen. A clatter. Glass breaking. Dad whispered, he's searching the house. Madeline's eyes widened. He's looking for something. Or someone, Lily whispered. I felt sick. The footsteps moved from room to room. Drawers opened. Cabinets slammed. Furniture scraped. Then, footsteps headed toward the staircase again. Each step creaked.
Slower.
Heavier. He was returning. Returning to the basement. I felt my vision blur. Dad tensed. Mom shook uncontrollably. Lily covered her ears. Madeline grabbed my hand. The man reached the basement door.
Paused.
And then, he began unscrewing something. Metal scraping metal. Dad whispered, "He's trying to remove the hinges." Madeline swore under her breath. Mom sobbed harder. I felt frozen.
Dead.
Terrified. The top hinge popped. A screw hit the floor above us. Then the second hinge. Another screw fell. Dad backed away. "He's taking the door off," Madeline whispered. "We need to run. Now." But we had one exit. One staircase. And he was at the top of it. Then, something unexpected happened. A sound cut through the house. A loud one. A familiar one. A voice. A furious voice. Yelling from the front door. "Hey, what the hell are you doing?" The man at the basement froze. Madeline's eyes snapped wide open. I felt my heart jump violently in my chest. Dad breathed. "Is that?" Yes. It was. It was him. Evan. Evan had come back. And the man at the basement door growled, "You're supposed to be gone." Evan shouted back, voice crackling with panic. "Get away from them." I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I kept replaying the moment Victoria whispered something into Daniel's ear, and his whole face collapsed like a paper cup in the rain. I kept seeing the way he staggered back at the Christmas table while everyone froze with their forks midair, watching the golden boy finally crack. And, worst of all, I kept hearing Mom's voice in my head. "Your brother didn't mean it. You know he's under pressure." Pressure?
No.
What Daniel did wasn't pressure. It was choice. And Christmas night, I saw just how deep that choice went. By the time morning came, my eyes were burning, my throat was tight, and my spirit felt tired. But my mind was sharper than it had been in years. Because I wasn't scared anymore. I was done being the quiet, easy sister. I was done letting Daniel rewrite me into the failure sibling so he could shine brighter. I was done letting Mom protect him from consequences like he was some fragile prince instead of a grown man who enjoyed crushing people. If Victoria hadn't shown up the way she did, if she hadn't done what she did, he would have destroyed me without blinking. I needed to know the whole truth of what happened after we all left that table. Why Daniel's phone hadn't stopped buzzing since midnight. Why he had locked himself in his childhood room and refused to come out. Why Mom kept pacing in the hallway whispering into her phone. Something was happening. Something big. And Daniel wasn't telling anyone. So, after hours of listening to footsteps and muffled arguments, I finally pushed myself out of bed, wrapped a blanket around my shoulders, and stepped into the hallway. That's when I heard it. A sound I had never heard from Daniel in my entire life.
Crying.
Not quiet crying. Not sniffles. I mean deep, ugly, shaking sobs, the kind that make a person's whole body fold in half. I froze. Part of me wanted to walk back into my room. Pretend I didn't hear it. Move on with my day like he had done 1,000,000 times when it was me crying in this same hallway. But another part of me, the part that still loved my brother no matter how badly he treated me, whispered, "Just see what's going on." So I walked toward his door. Softly. Slowly. When I reached it, I raised my hand and knocked. No answer. Another knock. Still nothing. But I could hear him, choking on his breath, breaking apart on the other side. My chest tightened. "Daniel," I whispered. "Can I come in?" Silence. Then a shaky voice, barely a whisper. "It's unlocked." I pushed the door open. And what I saw made me stop breathing. Daniel was sitting on the floor, hunched over like someone had ripped the world out from under him. His phone was in his hand, screen cracked, notifications blowing up nonstop. His suit jacket from the night before was tossed in the corner like he had thrown it in a rage. His eyes were red and swollen, hair messy, tie still around his neck like he hadn't bothered to undress. I had never, ever seen him like this. He looked ruined. Daniel, I said softly. What happened? He let out a bitter, broken laugh. What happened? He wiped his face with his sleeve. I lost everything. That's what happened. My heart thumped. What do you mean, everything? He slowly raised his phone, turning the screen toward me. And that was when I saw the first message. HR notification. Executive suspension pending. Then another. CEO request. Emergency board meeting. Monday, 8 a.m. Attendance required. Then another. Legal team. Urgent review needed. Please respond immediately. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. My breath caught in my throat. What is all this? He stared at the ground, jaw trembling. Victoria, he whispered. She reported me. My eyes widened. For what? He looked up at me with guilt carved deep into his face. For everything. A chill tore down my spine. What do you mean, everything? He swallowed hard. Every lie. Everything I covered up at work. Every project I sabotaged. Every time I took credit for someone else's idea. Every complaint someone filed that HR swept under the rug because of who I was dating. My stomach twisted. Oh my God. He wasn't a jerk. He was a monster wearing a clean suit. You did all that? He dropped his head into his hands. I thought she'd protect me, he whispered. I thought she'd make sure nothing touched me. I didn't think she'd ever. He took another shaking breath. I didn't think she'd turn on me. A cold truth slid across my skin like ice water. You hurt her pride, I said quietly. And her ego lives higher than your whole career. He laughed bitterly. You think I don't know that now? He covered his face again. She told the board everything. Every single thing. They're digging through every file, every email, every incident. My mind spun. She's ending your career. He nodded slowly. And she's good at it. We sat in silence for a moment. He looked small. And for the first time since we were kids, I realized just how fragile he really was behind that shiny, arrogant mask. Daniel, I whispered. Why did you do all that? Why any of it? He didn't answer at first. Then, I didn't want to be ordinary like you. The words sliced me. Hard. He must have seen the look on my face because he quickly shook his head. No, I didn't I didn't want to be average. I wanted to be someone. Someone important. And hurting people made you feel important. I whispered. He looked away. I didn't think anyone would ever call me out, he muttered. I didn't think anyone saw me clearly enough to do real damage. His voice cracked. But she did. And she waited. And she chose. Christmas night. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to feel. Yes, he had mocked me. Yes, he had humiliated me. Yes, he had belittled me for years. But seeing him this broken made my heart twist in a way I didn't expect. He wasn't the powerful enemy I had built in my head. He was a coward. A scared boy hiding behind expensive suits. A man who built his whole life on lies and expected no one to notice. I took a deep breath. Daniel, what's going to happen now? He shook his head. I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. And then he whispered something that stopped me cold. I think she's not done. My blood froze. What do you mean? He lifted his trembling hand and pointed to the phone. There's a voicemail, he said softly. From her. She left it at 5 a.m. A chill swept over me. Did you listen to it? He shook his head. I can't. My heart pounded. He looked at me, eyes swollen. Can you listen to it for me? Everything inside me tensed. I didn't know what I would hear. I didn't know what she had done, or what she was planning to do. But I knew one thing. Whatever was in that voicemail, it was going to change everything. I slowly reached for the phone. My thumb hovered over the play button. And right as I pressed it, the door downstairs slammed open so hard the house shook. Mom's terrified scream followed. Daniel. Oh my God, Daniel, they're here. I froze. Daniel's head snapped up. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Shouting. Heavy boots. Voices calling his name. I turned toward the hallway just as 3 silhouettes appeared at the top of the stairs. And that was when I realized Victoria wasn't just ending his career. She was ending something far bigger. Because the people standing in our hallway weren't from Daniel's job. They were investigators. Real ones. Wearing badges. And one of them was already pulling out a pair of handcuffs. The man stepped forward. "Daniel Carter," he said firmly. "You need to come with us." Daniel's whole face went white. "No, please wait, what?" But it was too late. They were already stepping into his room. Already reaching for him. Already reading him his rights. I stood frozen with the phone still in my hand. My hand shaking. My breath trapped in my lungs. And as they pulled Daniel to his feet, crying, begging, pleading, the phone suddenly lit up in my hand. The voicemail began playing automatically. And Victoria's cold, calm voice filled the room like a blade sliding through air. "I told you, Daniel," she said softly. "When you humiliate family at my table, you don't walk away untouched." The message ended. And that was when I realized this wasn't just revenge. This was precision. And she wasn't nearly finished. I don't remember breathing. Not when the officers pulled Daniel out of his room. Not when Mom grabbed his arm, screaming for anyone to stop all this. Not when Daniel locked eyes with me, tears streaming down his face, silently begging me to do something I couldn't do. All I remember is standing there frozen with Victoria's voice still echoing inside my skull. "When you humiliate family at my table, you don't walk away untouched." Her revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It wasn't the emotional chaos I had imagined when I pictured karma finally catching up to my brother.
No.
It was quiet, sharp,
Calculated.
a blade slipping smoothly into the softest part of his life and twisting until everything inside him fell apart. I followed them down the stairs in slow motion, watching as the morning light spilled into the house, soft, golden, peaceful. It didn't match the scene at all. Daniel stood in the living room, handcuffed, shaking. "Please," he said to the lead investigator. I can explain. I didn't do anything that serious. My girlfriend." She misunderstood. "She's not your girlfriend," the officer cut in flatly. "And this goes far beyond misunderstandings." Mom gripped the officer's arm with trembling fingers. "Please, he's a good boy. He's just stressed. He didn't mean." "Ma'am," the officer said gently. "We have documentation. Emails. Testimonies. Financial inconsistencies. Sabotage reports. And a formal complaint filed directly by Ms. Hale. Victoria Hale." The name dropped into the room like a stone. Mom's hand fell away. Daniel's shoulders collapsed. And I felt something shift inside me. A memory flashed. Christmas dinner, just hours earlier, him calling me a charity case, in front of everyone. The way he smirked when people laughed. The way he leaned closer to Victoria, proudly showcasing his cruelty like a talent. All to impress her. He never imagined she was the one person he should have feared most. Another officer stepped toward him. "Daniel Carter, you're being taken in for questioning regarding intentional workplace fraud, digital manipulation of corporate files, and obstruction of internal investigations." Daniel's knees almost buckled. No, please, just let me talk to her, just let me." "You'll have your chance," the officer said calmly. "At the station." They led him toward the front door. Mom's cries echoed through the house. I didn't move. I just watched as the boy who had tormented me for years, smarter, stronger, always getting away with everything, finally ran into someone he couldn't charm, couldn't bully, couldn't belittle. Someone who saw him clearly. Someone who acted when I no longer had the strength to. But as they opened the front door,
Someone else was standing there. Victoria.
Elegant black coat, perfect hair, expression calm, cold, and unreadable. Daniel's whole body went stiff. Victoria," he whispered. She didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't blink, just looked at him like he was a stain she was finally cleaning off her life. He tried to step toward her, but the officers held him back. Please, tell them you made a mistake," he begged. "Tell them you didn't mean for this to happen. Please, Victoria, I love you." Her eyes barely shifted. "You love power, Daniel," she said softly. "Not me." He froze. "And you use people," she continued. You use your sister. You use your coworkers. You use my company. You use my name. So, I used the one thing you cared about more than anything. She leaned in slightly. Your reputation. His breathing grew frantic. You don't have to do this, he whispered. She tilted her head. You humiliated her, she said calmly, nodding toward me. At my table. On my holiday. In my home. For the first time, her voice cracked with something sharp: anger, disappointment, disgust. I don't date men who punch down to feel tall. Daniel's knees finally gave out, and the officers had to catch him. Mom turned on her. How dare you? He loved you, he trusted you. Victoria's eyes flicked to her, cool and steady. Ma'am, she said, your son built a career on hurting people. You allowed it, protected it, encouraged it. Mom's mouth hung open. And the only reason you're angry at me, Victoria added quietly, is because I finally stopped him. Silence fell.
Thick.
Heavy. Unbreakable. Then she turned to me, and everything about her expression softened. Are you okay? No one had asked me that all night. Not once. I swallowed hard. I think so. She nodded slowly.
Good.
Because none of this was your fault. And you don't owe anyone an apology for what he did. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. Victoria gently placed a card in my hand. If they try to blame you for any of this, she said softly, call me. I won't let them. I nodded, too stunned to speak. Then the officers guided Daniel past her and down the steps. He turned back one last time. His voice was barely a whisper. Why, oh, why did you destroy me? Victoria didn't hesitate. Because you mocked the wrong woman, she said. And you tried to impress me by humiliating someone who never deserved it. He stared at her, broken. And then he was gone, escorted into the waiting car. The door slammed shut behind him. Mom fell to her knees in the doorway, sobbing. I stood frozen until the car disappeared down the street. Victoria turned to leave too. But before she did, she paused and looked at me one last time. For what it's worth, she said softly, you handled yourself with more grace last night than most people twice your age. I didn't know what to say. Take care of yourself, she added. You deserved a better Christmas than this. Then she walked away, calm, collected, unbothered, like she hadn't just rewritten the entire future of a man who thought he was untouchable. When the door closed behind me, I finally let out the breath I'd been holding. The house was quiet, broken, different. I walked upstairs to my room and sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything felt heavy. Everything felt strange. Everything felt quiet. But underneath all the chaos, all the fear, all the shock, there was something else. Relief. Because for the first time in my life, Daniel's shadow wasn't hanging over me. His words weren't in my ears. His judgment wasn't in my chest. His cruelty wasn't on my back. I was free, and I didn't free myself. Another woman did. A woman who didn't owe me anything, who didn't even know me, but who saw injustice and refused to stay silent. That night, as I finally closed my eyes, I realized something. Revenge doesn't always come from fury. Sometimes it comes from clarity, from justice, from power meeting cruelty head-on. My brother mocked me at Christmas dinner to impress his CEO girlfriend. He didn't expect her to destroy his career that night. But she did. And I learned something important from it. When women protect each other, cruel men don't stand a chance.